morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, December 13. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, would ask that you turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with electronic communications, as all of our meetings are streamed online. We do not have any proclamations to present this morning, but we do have an opportunity for special recognition of the good work that employees in our Public Information Office provide. So I'm going to ask Jody Hanson to step up. Jody is Director of Public Affairs and Public Information. And this office continues to receive high recognition at the national level as well as the regional level for the work that they do. So Jody, I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you. I would love the team to come join me as I make these remarks. Good morning, Jody Hanson, Director of Public Affairs and Communication for Johnson County Government. Chairman Eilert and Commissioners, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to honor this very talented team. As you can see, they did a lot of award-winning work this year, and I'm so pleased to share with you the recognition that they earned. The Best Times team, which is Gerald Hay and Sherelle Bilquist, you can wave, received 9 awards from the North American Mature Publishers Association. They received 5 first place, 3 second place, and a third place, and this was for the 2018 Journalism Excellence Contest. These were awards for writing, advertising, and overall magazine design. Our team won several awards from the National Association of County Information Officers. Our Twitter account won a Superior, which is the top award for Best Twitter Feed, and our Facebook won an Excellence, which is second place for Best Facebook Page. Keith Davenport is our current social media specialist, and others before him in this role worked very hard to keep our social media platforms robust and good places for information sharing and engagement. The spring 2018 issue of JOCO Magazine won Superior and Best Class Awards. Everyone on our team works very hard on this publication, as do many others in our office and the organization. So we're thankful to a lot of people for that project. Gerald Hay won 6 awards in this competition for writing. 4 Excellence Awards for news writing, speech writing for Veterans Day, and also an external publication for the Best Times. He also got 2 Meritorious Awards for his 2017 State of the County speech and feature writing. I'm going to keep talking about Gerald for a little bit. The Best Times won first place from the Kansas Press Association for a non-daily magazine. He also received 5 various writing awards. Gerald won 2 gold awards this year from the Kansas City Press Club, general reporting on Veterans Treatment Court and feature reporting on a story about Korean War veterans. He also got 2 silver awards, business reporting and column writing, for a story on a mentoring program at the Enterprise Center of Johnson County. The last category I'm going to talk about is the Public Relations Society of America, Greater Kansas City Chapter. These awards are not just government awards, so I always like to remind folks that we're competing with names like Cerner, Hallmark, J.E. Dunn, St. Luke's Health System, some pretty well-known names. So it's nice to see how our work measures up to some of these companies. Lori Sand and a former team member, Christine Depissoir, earned a Gold Prism for the 2017 Annual Report, Advancement Through Collaboration. Gerald, again, got a Gold Prism for his editorial, A Walk in the Park, and a Gold Prism for his feature story, Korean War Veterans, Freedom is Not Free. In the magazine category, The Best Time earned a Gold Prism in the magazine category. For video, Eric Schultz, we haven't had a chance to single him out yet, won 2 Silver Prisms for videos, one for a career in emergency communications, and one for the men and women of the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Finally, Gerald, we had to end on Gerald, won a silver for the 2017 Johnson County Veterans Day observance. I have only been with this team for about 6 months, but it took me about 6 minutes to figure out how talented these folks are. They're hardworking and they're passionate about what we do. So thank you so much for taking the time to recognize them.
Well, thank you all very much. Great job, gang. And, you know, the individual performances are also noted, and you can observe the awards that are displayed here this morning. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clicker, you had a comment?
Yes.
Hang on for a moment here, if you would. I do have a couple comments to make in your regard. As most everyone knows, I'm a very strong advocate of the PIO office. And to me, and to my fellow commissioners here, you guys are very important to make sure the messages of policies and processes and the services that we provide from the county get out to the general public. I'd like to make a specific comment. While I don't want to negate the awards or the attention to the rest of the staff, I'd like to recognize folks a little bit more on the best of times. As many of you know, I've been a strong advocate of the best of times. And sometimes questions come up whether or not we should continue it or should we merge it with some of our other publications and so forth. I asked the staff if they would begin a survey of the readers and people that are using the best of times or pay attention to it. And I've gotten the initial response on that, and I'd like to make my fellow commissioners aware of it. In the survey that just went out here within the last 30 days, there have already been about 136 responses that came back. What is staggering here, only 3 people that responded said they read it online. So the print material has been very, very important, especially to this group. Out of 135, out of the, 136 surveyed here, 135 said they actually read the magazine. A couple other notables, and Gerald, this goes to you because I just see your workload increasing here. Out of the 136, 56 comments said that everything is of an interest to them, but the balance of them had a whole list of more things they wanted in the magazine. And there's a list that long. Another thing that was brought up was, what, if anything, would you want changed in the magazine? 83 respondents said nothing, leave it as it is. And then the balance of them had a whole nother list, Gerald, of what they want added in there. Overall, I guess I really have to take my hat off to you. You all have verified what I thought was the case and how important that publication is. And for that, Jody, you and your team, and I know I give credit a lot to Gerald and Trell, but the fact of the matter is you all work as a team. And I do want to emphasize an added thank you to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's not forget about the photo. So if you all will come over here and stand in front of, or stand behind the table. And commissioners, if we can come together, why, we'll have an opportunity to share in this photo too.
You want us to stay here?
Don't stand behind me.
Yeah, look at me.
Yeah. It's the beard.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good job. Thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, we will turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information. Mr. Raby.
Good morning. I thought I might have to stand in line. Tom Raby, 17513 West 113th Street in Olathe. You've got a few facilities in the county named after officials that used to work but are now retired. I don't think you should wait until Gerald retires to rename that to Gerald R. Hay Public Information Office. Okay, well, I travel around the county a bit, not everywhere, but a bit. They're building more warehouses but on Old 56 Highway between here and the airport. I call it the airport, and someday it may be the airport. I've been advocating that for 30 years. And then there's an auxiliary airport out off of Phelan, and that's fine. But there's a lot of growth. And you might say, well, it's all warehouses. Well, warehouses produce jobs. And they typically don't pay minimum wage. And people say, well, that's all grunt work. Hey, in today's world, you got nice little machines. All you need to do is have a capable operator operate those nice little machines, and you can move all that product back, forth, and around, and you got scanners. You don't have to trust the guy's memory to pick the right thing or anything like that. But it's, aside from that, all of this growth, and you got the same thing down Lone Elm and all over. Those of you live in the northeast part of the county, you don't know where the heck I'm talking about, but it's all there. And I even understand Mission Mall is someday or soon going to be something else finally. And we've waited a long time for that. But growth equals economic progress. Isn't that great? And we've had it for a long time in this county, and lots of it. But growth will ultimately lead to gridlock, not just physical gridlock, but other forms of gridlock. And I'm going to take a bit of license here just to mention, if you think gridlock in other areas is not occurring, take a look at the proposed legislative agenda, and it's a monster. And that just tells you that the county has to go to Topeka with their hat in their hand, or a stick in their hand, or whatever weapon you use to try to persuade things to go the county's way. Well, you know, in a lot of states, some of them I've lived in, several of them I've lived in, county government has gone away. The county lines are geographically there, but there's no county government. And in the case of Virginia, even the county lines go away. Municipalities just absorb that property, and the county, there's quite a few counties in Virginia that have totally disappeared from the books. So that can't happen in Johnson County because the legislature is such a cumbersome thing, super cumbersome, and they only work 2 or 3 months out of the year, and in those 2 or 3 months, they're too busy pressing the flesh and lifting the glass and fighting the committee chairs, and they're working for the taxpayers. Hell no, they don't work for the taxpayers, and I'm sorry to be a little bit cynical about that, but it's true. And I know a couple of legislators personally. My access is not all that great, but I know it. But anyway, the thing is, if we get both legislative, bureaucratic, and physical gridlock in this county, the lack of public transportation, the lack of affordable housing, all those things are going to really kill us. And we will be not dead in the water, but we'll be someday we'll be in for a rude awakening. And I'll leave you this one thought. Remember that a pessimist is only happy when he's unhappy. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Mike Jensen, 1257 East Butterfield Place, Olathe, Kansas. And we're going to project some documents. The zip drive I brought in was too full. The system didn't like it, so we're going to go a different route. I represent a group of citizens, CC4RG, and something's come to our attention that we're very concerned about, and it's human slavery. We thought that when Wilberforce did his thing in England 150 years ago, that ended. Well, I've got some really bad news during Christmas season. It did not end, and it's occurring right in Johnson County. It's occurring in Olathe, Leawood, Lenexa, and all of our cities. It takes on many forms. The one that's to us most egregious and the most visible, and they advertise openly on the internet, are the IMBs, the illicit massage parlors, that keep popping up in our cities. And it looks to me like we're playing whack-a-mole with them. It looks like one city passes new ordinances, enforces them, and then the business just moves across a geopolitical boundary. That city passes new ordinance laws, and so they pop to the next city. So we're interested in eradicating this. The only model that we've found that eradicates it is to punish the user, to eliminate the demand for illicit sex. And I want to set a couple things straight too. No little 5-year-old girl ever says, when I grow up, I want to sell my body 10 to 20 times a day and be exploited. We just got back from Nepal. We know families, we have ministries over there. We know families personally that haven't seen their daughter in 20 years. They were promised that their daughter was going to be given a good job in Mumbai, Bangalore, and they end up in one of our strip malls in Johnson County. They never leave. We've watched them. These girls are locked in here. They sleep there. They eat there. And this is completely unacceptable. We at CC4RG have joined with our Attorney General's office to demand an end to human exploitation, human slavery. Completely unacceptable. Derek Schmidt's office has initiated a petition drive. He's joined 30-some other attorney generals across our nation demanding an end to the exploitation of human beings through sexual slavery. There's all kinds of slavery. Labor slavery, and unfortunately, they get mixed a lot. You'll see somebody working at a restaurant during the day, and then they're working somewhere else during the night. But I'm going to read this, demand an end petition. We at CC4RG have set a goal of getting 10,000 signatures. And Daniel Hellwig presented last week. He about killed me when I told him that. I've given 100 of my friends a petition and challenged them to get 100 signatures. That's 10,000 right there. And I'm going to read this to you, demand an end. And the website for Derek Schmidt and our Attorney General's right up there, they're leading the charge on this. The Kansas Constitution guarantees the people of Kansas the right to, quote, instruct their representatives, end quote. Tom, you know we have the right to instruct those that we elect? All right. And to, quote, petition the government or any department thereof for the redress of grievances, end quote. Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights, Section 3, pursuant to that right, people who demand an end to buying sex may sign the petition, which will be presented to the Kansas legislature and governor in January of 2019. The purpose of the petition is to show support for efforts to end commercial sexual exploitation, including that of children in the Sunflower State. The petition is an open public record, and its contents, including the names of the persons or organizations that sign it, will be made public. The Senate, House of Representatives, and Governor of the State of Kansas. Pursuant to Section 3 of the Kansas Bill of Rights, we, the undersigned, demand an end to the commercial sexual exploitation of human beings and petition our elected officials and leaders to understand and recognize that buying sex is not a victimless crime. I know I don't have much time left. We're really pushing for the Nordic model. It's the only model that's proved effective. Sweden claims that they've reduced human sexual trafficking by 70 to 80% by criminalizing the buyer. Did you know that it's a felony to have a dogfight or a cockfight in the state of Kansas? Do you know what it is for purchasing sex from a minor or purchasing sex from somebody that's been raped, abused, kidnapped, and brought to our state or any other state and locked in a strip mall and forced to perform sex on 10 to 20 people a day? It's a misdemeanor. I want to repeat that. Cockfighting and dogfighting is a felony. Purchasing sex from a trafficked victim is a misdemeanor. That's wrong. We are serious about ending the demand for this. I've got a whole stack of the petitions here. Be glad to hand them out. All of us know, 30 to 100 people that could sign these, and we want to give them to our lawmakers in January. Another thing I want to add, 1/3 of all sexually exploited people are minors. 1/3 of all sexually exploited people are minors. And folks, it's happening right here in Johnson County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Important subject. Thank you for those comments. Anyone else? All right, okay.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Coker. I am a resident at 11843 South Skyview Lane. I apologize because clearly I'm a little underdressed, but didn't know I was attending this morning until about 30 minutes ago. My home, to give you a little history behind why I'm here, sits next to the new county building going in up at Sunset. The building actually sits on the parcel to the north, or to the east on Sunset. Then there is a large parcel that the communications tower sits on that is between the building and my subdivision. I am here as a representative of my subdivision. Clearly, this is a topic that is very personal to me. I'm a taxpayer. I voted for the new building. I realize the value in new development like this for the county and the city. But I am here requesting your help that the county be held to the same standards that you or I would be if we were developing that building. We had a neighborhood meeting on September 13th. At that meeting, we were presented with half of a plan, not a plan in its entirety. According to City Ordinance 1840-030, gives a list of criteria for neighborhood meetings. Included in that list is a site plan and elevations. The meeting shall be held 20 days before the planning meeting with the city. We shall be giving a complete overview of the project. What we are presented should be accurate. None of those things happened. We were, in effect, provided with, and I apologize because I really wasn't prepared for this morning. It's small, but I'll pass it along. There are two parcels that sit next to each other. We were given this, right? So people ask questions. They said, hey, are you touching the trees on the adjacent parcel? We were told no, nothing to worry about. You know, the building's up here. There is a very large parcel with trees that have been there forever that shield a very large communication tower with a building with a chain link fence around it. About a week and a half ago, please keep in mind, we were told those trees were not going to be touched. And the meeting did not follow the ordinance for requirements. About a week and a half ago, I'm looking out my window, a bunch of trees are tagged. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they're clearing out trees for the cell phone tower, for the 911 tower. So I call Sean at the city. Sean is Dan Fernandez's supervisor. And Sean says, Kathy, I don't know what you're talking about. They shouldn't be touching trees on that parcel at all. That's not part of the plan. He said, let me send somebody out there. I'll look into it. I'll call you back. Sean didn't call me back. So then I went out, spoke with the project construction foreman. The foreman gave me Janice Phillips' name, who's the construction manager from the county on the project. Janice proceeded to explain to me, on this parcel where the building was going to be constructed was a very large pile of dirt. It is a large pile of dirt that exists because the forensics building was built, and they took that dirt and they moved it across the street. Well, early on in the project, which we were not told at the neighborhood meeting, there was an agreement with the company to remove the dirt. The company was going to basically remove the dirt for free because they needed the dirt. Well, that fell through with only 20% of the dirt removed. So now the county was looking at being out of budget to the tune of about $300,000. Rather than remove the dirt and do what is right, they decided that it would be better for their timeline and their budget that they just take that dirt and remove all those trees and shove that dirt downhill. My house is the basin for the dirt, the drainage, everything. There's one culvert that sits behind my home where all the water already runs to and is clearly not capable of any more water because there's a family of raccoons that lives in it. So it's clearly not functioning. So we had a neighborhood meeting last night because I talked to Janice. I said, Janice, you got to stop construction until you've met with the citizens of this subdivision. We are the taxpayers. We approved this. So we have the neighborhood meeting. At that meeting, and I thank Commissioner Ashcraft and Mr. Waters for attending, at that meeting, we were presented with a drainage plan that had a bunch of arrows on it that inaccurately reflected reality. I don't have a copy of that plan here, but the arrows were wrong. We had citizens of the neighborhood stand up and go, that's not the way the water runs. You're basing a plan on assumptions on drainage. We've had drainage problems over there for years, and that culvert doesn't work. So clearly the people involved did not know that their plan was based on a bunch of assumptions that aren't reality. Then we were shown a lighting plan that was based off trees existing. And oh, by the way, the drainage plan was based on trees existing. It's my understanding that a new environmental study was not required by the city before they approved the plan 2 days after our meeting. So the lighting plan needs to be redone. And then there's this view. My Christmas card has this fabulous view. You don't even know there's a tower there unless you're out on the street. Now, this is what my Christmas card looks like. And I see the base of a very ugly satellite tower. So we also broke an ordinance about preserving trees, tree preservation. It wasn't pushed toward 119th Street, the dirt, because that's an area of tree preservation. Well, the area that is behind me is required by municipal code to shield us from the tower. So you basically broke the code to shove the dirt downhill. So clearly, I'm very concerned about drainage, lighting, and my view. And oh, by the way, I'm an appraiser, and we don't even have to talk about the ding to my property value that now applies to my home. So I'm super disappointed in the city. Last night, Dan Fernandez, the planner on the project, attended. I reached out to the mayor. The mayor did not respond to me. Sean, who never returned my call, Dan's supervisor, did not respond to me, did not show up at the meeting. The city manager was not there. The only person from the city that was there was Dan Fernandez. Dan Fernandez was the person at the planning meeting right after our neighborhood meeting. There was a gentleman at the meeting that's also on the planning committee with the last name Sutherland. He recused himself from the meeting.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. You have exceeded the 5 minutes, so I'm going to have to ask you to make a closing comment.
Okay, I am here to request that my county board of commissioners hold the county to the same level of standards that you would hold myself or anyone in this audience. I believe that omission is also lying, and I believe that my neighbors and myself were completely misled about the direction of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? All right, if there's no one else to be heard, the public comment portion of the agenda is closed. I would just make this comment. I know there are some issues that we will continue to work on resolving as far as this project is concerned. And so the information from the meeting last night will be reviewed and conversations will continue in an attempt to resolve at least some of the issues. Thank you all very much. There are no notes for the record this morning, so we will move to the agenda. Will the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider approving the November 15th, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider authorizing an agreement between Johnson County and the City of DeSoto, Kansas for the provision of law enforcement services in 2019 by the Sheriff's Office to the City of DeSoto for the total amount of $510,671. Item number 3, consider authorizing an agreement between Johnson County and the City of Edgerton, Kansas for the provision of law enforcement services in 2019 by the Sheriff's Office to the City of Edgerton for the total amount of $310,459. Item number 4, resolution number 104-18. Consider authorizing the cancellation of outstanding county-issued checks that are at least 2 years old. Item number 5, consider approving and authorizing the board chair to execute the Patient Safety Organization, PSO, participant agreement with the Center for Patient Safety, CPS, allowing Johnson County Emergency Medical Services, MedAct, and Johnson County Emergency Management and Communications, EMC, to participate as members of the PSO. Item number 6, consider authorizing the reallocation and expenditure of fund balances, reserves for FY 2018 in the amount of $323,887 in the general fund, including the reclassification of fund balance reserves in the countywide budget in the amount of $250,000, and authorize the increased transfer and the associated expenditure authority in Johnson County Library in the amount of $7,000, and the Johnson County Developmental Supports in the amount of $66,887 to the County General Fund, Human Resource Department in FY 2018. Item number 7, resolution number 105-18. Consider amending and modifying certain portions and provisions of the FY 2018 and FY 2019 budget resolutions 061-17 and 065-18 related to the Office of the Sheriff, approving a modified civil service pay table for use in the Sheriff's Office for FY 2019, increasing the amount of contingency funds available as a designated reserve for sheriff operations from $1,500,000 to $2,250,000 for both FY 2018 and FY 2019, and setting the salary for the position of the Johnson County Sheriff at $163,553.40 effective December 16, 2018. And item number 8, consider renewing the property and liability insurance policies for calendar year 2019 with the quoting carriers in the amount of $1,655,708.
Okay, thank you. Is there any commissioner who would like to have any one of those items considered separately? Is there anyone present who would like to have one of those items considered separately? If not, it's back before the commission. The motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Moving to the action agenda.
Item number 9, resolution number 103-18. Consider appointing Diane C. Peterson, MD, as District Coroner for the 10th Judicial District of Kansas for a term of 4 years, beginning January 14, 2019, affirming the reappointment of deputy coroners and confirming compensation and fee amounts.
Ms. Marsh, I think this item needs one small adjustment. Is that right, from the
That
resolution
is correct,
that was
and I'll
presented?
identify that as I go through the presentation.
Pardon?
I'll identify that as I go through the presentation, if that's
Okay,
agreeable,
right.
or do you want me to state it now?
No, go right ahead, yeah.
All right. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Lou Jean Marsh, Director, Department of Health and Environment. This item before you is a resolution for appointment of a district coroner. Before I begin sort of an overview of the item and the resolution, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce all of you to the individual that we have selected as our chief medical examiner for Johnson County and the individual that we are requesting be appointed as district coroner, Dr. Diane C. Peterson, if I'd like for her to stand to be recognized. So this resolution that's before you this morning is regarding the appointment of Dr. Peterson effective January 14, 2019, and affirming appointment of deputy coroners and the requisite compensation for the deputy coroners. As you know, there is a statutory requirement that the Board of County Commissioners appoint a district coroner every 4 years. Dr. Robert Prosser has been serving in that capacity for nearly 2 decades, as I understand it, and has served the county very well in that role. But as you know, we are transitioning over time to a medical examiner / coroner model instead of the traditional coroner model under which we've been operating. Dr. Peterson, in her role as Chief Medical Examiner, was recruited and hired by the Department of Health and Environment, but to serve as the district coroner requires your appointment, and that is what we have before you today. In addition, deputy coroners are appointed by the district coroner, and we are naming a number of individuals, several of whom have already been serving as deputy coroners, and then we're adding to that list Dr. Prosser, who has graciously agreed to continue serving the county in the role of deputy coroner, along with Dr. Alan Martinez. Those 2 names will be added to the continuation of service by Dr. Arthur Snow, Dr. Alan Hancock, Dr. Constance Eric, and Dr. Kevin Koch. And in a minute, we want to say a little bit more about the service of those deputy coroners. The change is that we had initially planned to appoint Dr. Lindsay Haldeman as a deputy coroner, and through more careful review of the resolution and all of the things, the qualifications that needed to be considered, Dr. Haldeman's name has been removed. So you will have a corrected resolution that's been prepared by our legal department that omits Dr. Haldeman's name. The other change in this resolution is that we are asking for an increase in compensation for our deputy coroners from $115 to $150 for each day on which they are serving in an on-call capacity as a deputy coroner. Dr. Prosser brought to my attention that the $115 amount was woefully inadequate for the caliber and the quality and the quantity of service that we're asking these deputies to perform. So we're happy to include that increased compensation in this resolution, which all of this will become effective in January on the 14th. You also may remember that the Kansas statute asked the Kansas Medical Society to make a nomination, and in this instance, the Medical Society deferred to this board for its selection and appointment of Dr. Peterson. Before I stand for questions, I would like to invite Dr. Prosser to the podium, and he would like to make a few remarks.
Very good.
I think most of you know me, Dr. Bob Prosser. I've been the coroner in this county now for 21 years. The ancients listed 7 things that people were supposed to do as good deeds. 2 of those are to visit the sick and to bury the dead. And I've been very privileged in my career in Johnson County to be able to do both, and I'm honored that I served as coroner for the last 21 years. I also want to say to people that this job is a bit like being a symphony conductor. The conductor gets all the credit and all the blame, and everyone else does all the work. I'd like to specifically thank the people doing the work, the law enforcement authorities who do the investigation, the people at the local funeral homes who take care of all the minutia in order to get people's affairs settled, everyone that I've worked with in the county who does the things with the budget, and probably more importantly, the deputy coroners who take call on a day-to-day basis and usually lose 1 or 2 hours of sleep every night that they're on call, trying to resolve issues of patients who either die an accidental death, homicide, suicide, or unattended by a physician. Mike, one second. We have 2 people here right now who served as deputy coroners for a while. I'd like to introduce them to you. Dr. Arthur Snow has been a deputy coroner longer than I've been coroner, probably 30 or 35 years. Dr. Kevin Koch has been a deputy coroner for about 18 or 20 years. Dr. Connie Eyrich is currently serving as a deputy coroner. She's a family physician in Overland Park and couldn't make it. Dr. Mike Handler and Dr. Charlie Glenn have served as deputy coroners for years here. They're both out of the country on sabbaticals right now. Again, I'm very pleased the county has appointed Dr. Diane Peterson. She's extremely well qualified. She is a medical physician, completed her MD at KU, is a board-certified residency-trained forensic pathologist from Alabama. We stole her from Jackson County, where she's been about the last 10 years. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Bob. Dr. Prosser, stay there just a second. I think it's appropriate to recognize you officially for your service to Johnson County and also your assistance as we transition from a previous coroner's process to the medical examiner's facility. Your assistance in that movement has been very, very valuable. So thank you that you're going to continue to help us out in the coroner's medical examiner's operation area. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Prosser, and I would now stand for any questions that the board has for me.
Okay, one question, Ms. Marsh. The $150 a day for a deputy coroner who would be on call, 24-hour call, is that, I assume that's rotating? Is that every day or just the weekends, or how does that process work?
It would be the overnight hours and weekends. And as I understand the practice now, and we would probably continue that, is that Dr. Prosser works with the deputy coroners to determine availability, and a schedule is created, and then that schedule is provided to the sheriff's department so that when an unattended death or something that requires the deputy coroner's attention occurs, they know who to call.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's okay. It's appropriate to underscore that these responsibilities do not end at 5 p.m.
That's exactly right.
And things happen during the late and early day hours. So yes, that's fine. Thank you. Other questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on your point, last week we had a brief discussion about the salary of $150 a day, and I understand the increase, but Mr. Chairman, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but that's about what a substitute teacher gets paid, and I had encouraged Ms. Marsh and the coroner's staff or HR to look at those costs and to find out if that's really a fair and equitable pay. I'm not wanting to make it outlandish, but 150 just I mean, I can't even go to the doctor's office and be in and out in 15 minutes for less than that. So I just don't know how that works. So I would hope we can look at that and give us some feedback on what makes sense.
Well, I've made some inquiries, Commissioner, based on your comment from last week. I made an inquiry of Sedgwick County, and they do have deputy coroners appointed, but as it turns out, all of them are employed by their Forensic Science Center as forensic pathologists, and so their on-call coverage is part of their total compensation. And of course, going forward, any on-call after-hours time that Dr. Peterson spends, or when we add additional forensic pathologists, that too will be part of their total compensation. I also made the inquiry of Dr. Prosser as to his awareness of what was paid to deputy coroners in other jurisdictions, and his response was that they weren't compensated, basically. Would you like to add a little more to that, Dr. Prosser?
Until Johnson County hires deputies and more medical examiners, state law currently requires that the deputy coroners on call be physicians. The nights that the coroners take call, they're usually up once or twice for a couple of hours in the middle of the night, handling stuff on the phone. Once or twice a month, one of us is stuck getting to go to a scene. You will not find any physician in this county who is willing to take a wage of $150 for a call like that. I think these people are all doing this as a public service. Doctors make more than that an hour, much less for a day on call. And I think we're getting an extremely good deal to have people like Dr. Koch, Dr. Snow, and Dr. Eyrich and Dr. Martinez willing to take call. The other clarification is the deputy coroners take call for 24 hours. They also take it during the day. I suspect when Dr. Peterson's here, she'll take some of the day call, but she, as Mr. Eilert mentioned, she can't be available every second of the day, and actually a deputy coroner has to be. We have to have one on call, and we actually have one on backup call who doesn't get paid in case the first person can't answer the phone.
Okay, let me ask you this, but the $150 compensation, is that your recommendation? You're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that at the moment, and so are the deputies. I mean, you may, I suspect the model is going to change fairly soon, and we won't be using the deputies as much. So I think that'll sort of drop out when you have full-time county employees and you have investigators. Right now, the county does not have any investigators. A lot of places like Sedgwick County would have a full-time investigator on who do all the work and then just call the deputy on call and say, is this okay? He'd say, fine. We're doing all the work. I can tell you when there's a death involving an organ donation that occurs after hours in Johnson County, the deputy on call will spend 4 or 5 hours of time on the telephone dealing with that.
Well, it seems to me that there's a possibility that these particular positions and compensation thereof will be under future review as additional personnel are hired. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed in the briefing sheet as I looked through it, I didn't see anything referencing compensation. We're discussing the reappointment of deputy coroners and their compensation and fee amounts, but I would like to understand what we're paying for our new coroner.
So the salary that was offered to Dr. Peterson and which she accepted is $240,000 annually.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? No one to be heard is back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Allen, excuse me, Mr. Schaefer.
Go ahead, Joe. My only question is, because of the change, can I, the motion that's in the packet, can I read that motion? Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I would move that the board adopt resolution number 103-18 pursuant to KSA 22A226, appointing Dr. Diane C. Peterson, MD, as district coroner for a term of 4 years beginning January 14, 2019, subject to the conditions stated in the resolution, affirming the appointments of deputy coroners and confirming compensation and fees for the deputy coroners.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the resolution as presented. Is there any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Clicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 10, consider allocating $131,775 of 2019 Human Service Funds as recommended by United Community Services of Johnson County, UCS, in its 2019 Human Service Fund Recommendations Report.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Johnny McFarland with the County Manager's Office. I'm here today regarding a request for approval for the funding recommendations put forth by United Community Services. The total amount recommended for approval is $131,775, which will be combined with funds from 14 other jurisdictions for a total of $359,801. The Human Services Fund provides program funding for 14 nonprofit organizations in Johnson County who target vulnerable populations at or below the federal poverty level. Attached to the briefing sheets is a full report on page 2 with a breakdown of the organizations approved by UCS for funding, as well as a breakdown of the total amount being granted for each applicant and a description of the program. We do have a representative from UCS here to answer any questions you guys may have.
Johnny, let me ask you this. The source of the funding is?
The Human Services Fund.
Okay. Is that CDBG or other? CDBG related or?
I'm not sure. I could get a representative from UCS.
Chairman, those are county tax dollars, our
Those
contribution,
are
our
direct
portion,
tax dollars.
also matched by cities' contributions to that fund as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this comment is for this item and the next item. I just wanted to make mention last week, these items came forward, and I'm supportive of both of these items, but I had asked them not to go on consent so I could visit with Ms. Brew and her staff, and I was able to do that yesterday. We had a very good conversation. I wanted to thank them for the efforts that they've put in presenting this information. In the last couple of years, they've done a lot to talk about the results projected, and I was just inquiring about the results projected from last year and whether or not they had been obtained. And so after a little bit of discussion, they're going to make some modifications, I think, in the reporting next year, which I think makes perfect sense. And I just wanted to thank, well, Ms. Brewer's not here, so her team. So thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Thomas was there too.
Thank you.
Thompson, or whatever, whoever he is.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like a point of clarification from somebody from UCS. Is it a part of your policy that employees of United Community Services do not engage in political activity relative to their employment?
I'm Maria Schott with United Community Services, Director of Resource Allocation. Yes, that's true. As an organization, we are involved in some advocacy, but we stay within the guidelines of the statute.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? No one to be heard is back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you. I move to allocate $131,775 of the 2019 Human Services Fund as recommended by United Community Services of Johnson County in its 2019 Human Services Fund Recommendations Report.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the allocation as recommended. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Clicka.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 11, consider allocating $138,852 of 2019 alcohol tax funds as recommended by the Drug and Alcoholism Council of Johnson County, a program of United Community Services of Johnson County, UCS, in its 2019 Alcohol Tax Fund Recommendations Report.
Johnny.
Good morning, Commissioners. Johnny McFarland, the County Manager's Office. I'm here today regarding a request for approval of the funding recommendations put forth by the Drug and Alcoholism Council of Johnson County, which allocates the alcohol tax funds. The total amount recommended for approval for Johnson County is $138,852 for a combined total of $2,122,712 or when combined with the 9 other participating jurisdictions. Breakdown of the ATF funding from each jurisdiction can be found on page 14 of the recommendation report. Programs being funded with this money specifically target treatment, recovery, and prevention of drug abuse and alcoholism. And a full list of applicants can be found on page 2 of the recommendations report, which range from school districts to nonprofits. And a breakdown of these programs can be found on pages 4 through 13. I'll stand by for any questions, and we also have a representative from UCS to answer any detailed questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me say a couple of things. Number one, thank you to the Alcohol and Drug Task Force, who annually reviews the appropriation of these funds. And as I recall, these funds are specifically directed for specific uses. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's outlined in statute how the funding can be used. And I would like to acknowledge that Reverend Kevin Scuddy is here today. He represents the Board of County Commissioners on the Drug and Alcoholism Council.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions? Anyone present who would like to address this issue? If there's no one to be heard, then
Mr.
it's
Chairman?
back for the commission. Mr. Klicka?
Yeah, I'm sitting here kind of wondering what the motive for the question that was raised on the previous item relative to the potential ethics issue or campaign issue. Is that just information only?
I will answer that question since I'm the one that raised it. It was brought to my attention that one or more employees of UCS was involved in elections, the Board of County Commissioners elections in this last cycle. I really struggle with that. If on one side UCS has people out helping certain people get elected and then appear before us asking for $131,000 and $138,000 and whatever else comes up, I struggle with that. I struggle that on one side, they're helping certain people get elected, and on the other side, they've got their hand out and they're asking for money.
Mr. Chairman, and the reason I ask this is I want to keep this issue somewhat separate based on the question that was there. I do support the efforts of what's going on, and but on the other hand, it appears like you're raising a flag there of concern, and I would yield, I believe, to the county manager's office to double check that issue and make sure that's taken care of, because I would hate to see this organization, the programs we have, tarnished along the way.
Totally agree.
I would suggest that that approach be careful. We all have certain rights that as individuals we can exercise, and so those rights are should be at the top of everybody's list. So. Any other comments on the item that's before us? Have I asked for public comment? I think not. I think I have. So,
yes, you did.
Mr. Allen, did you have a motion?
I think Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Schaefer?
Be happy to do so again. I move to allocate $138,852 of the 2019 alcohol tax funds as recommended by the Drug and Alcoholism Council in its 2019 Alcohol Tax Fund Recommendations Report.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the appropriation and allocation of the alcohol tax funds as noted. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 12, resolution number 102-18, application number SE-CU-3436AU. Consider a request from Joan Russler, applicant landowner, for a conditional use permit renewal for an oversized accessory structure located at 20000 Beverly Street on 7.6 acres on property zoned RN1 Residential Neighborhood 1 District.
Mr. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, the planning director. This item is for conditional use permit renewal for a accessory structure located on 7.69 acres, zoned RN1. It's for a 7,200 square foot structure. It was originally approved in 2007. It was approved or recommended for approval by the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board when that group met on November the 7th, 2018. Staff is also recommending approval for the 20-year term. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make? All right. I'm sorry, if you could come to the podium or microphone. Again, your comment was?
Yeah, I'm Joan Rosler, and the building's 20 years old. It was originally approved in 1999 as a 6,000 square foot structure, and then, just like you said, in 2009 as a 7,200. We added on a little.
Okay, thank you very much. Jay, this does come to us with staff as well as zoning recommendation for approval.
Yes, that is correct.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Anyone else who would like to address the commission on this item? There's none to be heard, so it's back before the commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Klicka?
I move to adopt resolution number 102-18 approving a conditional use permit renewal for an oversized accessory structure located at 20,000 Beverly Street for the reasons and subjects to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution and the application as recommended. Any further questions or comments? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 13, consider adopting the 2019 Johnson County State Legislative Platform.
Cindy.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I am here for further discussion on our state legislative platform. I'm going to just talk a little bit about probably the top 6 items, because that's what would be our priority for what we're going to focus on this next year, and then we can open it up and discuss other items as requested by the Commission. The first one I was going to talk about is in regards to, I'm going to kind of just go over some financial numbers because that was asked of us and why we are selecting these as our top 6. The first one in regards to the property tax lid, we have decided instead of focusing on repeal, this is staff recommendation, that's probably not going to go anywhere, even this year with change in legislature and change in the governors, that we would be better off if we took our political capital and focused on actual items that could be a larger impact to us living under a tax lid. And those would be transportation, CAPERS, health insurance, and IDD services and mental health services. Those are some big things that impact the county in our annual budgets that would be helpful if those did not have to be under the tax lid. The next one is in regards to statewide expansion of Medicaid. This too is a fiscal note to us. We currently have uncompensated care and mental health for about $7.4 million as discussed in there. And we did a little research with the help of mental health, and they said that 60% of the clients they see are uninsured. So they're just estimating that if we increased what the funding of Medicaid, that would be an additional $3.4 million that we would receive here locally. And then in regards to MedAC, they figured based on their who has insurance and not, that they have about $200,000 to $225,000 additional in funds. The transportation, this one's a hard fiscal note to put to it, but it's obviously very important to Johnson County to continue our growth and to continue maintaining the great highway system that we do have. So this would, we'd want to keep this as a priority for us, and there was a lot of good work done with Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Allen on the task force, so we look forward to seeing that report. We just heard from Senator John Skubal this morning that that report will probably be out the end of January. So we would like for this to remain as a top item because we think this will be getting some attention in this next legislative session. In regards to CAPERS funding, This one is a little more challenging to give you a fiscal note on the impact, but I'm just going to think about this one as a big picture. If we are giving our dollars for our employees that we give annually, or we do it every other week or so probably, and we're trying to balance our budget, keep it so that those people, when they're retired, the funds are there. But if the state isn't putting in their portion, that impacts our portion because it's all kind of blended together and invested. So if the investments aren't there's not as big a bucket up there, it could eventually impact us that they'd have to come back and have us raise our piece. So this is still critical for us, even without having a specific fiscal note, that we would want to keep this on our top agenda, that they don't borrow from this or reduce their contributions, and that they pay back what they have borrowed. The next one is in regards to remote sales tax. And we did kind of just some backing out of some numbers that some national reports that were out there. And now the number is not here in front of me as I look at this sheet of paper. I want to say, and I'm going to look to Justin because he helped me do this. Was it like 1.2 million at the low end that we would possibly see for additional sales tax? 1.9, okay, I was way off. So those could be some significant numbers, and that, wouldn't all come in the first year, obviously. But that's one of the other reasons we thought this would be important, that this is not a new sales tax. This is just a new way of collecting that sales tax. And then the last item on there is the expanding the Homestead Act and Safe Senior eligibility. This would not have a fiscal impact on the county's budget, but it would help our citizens. When I hear you speak of how we want to look at the tax rate for property taxes, it gives them the opportunity on their income tax. That number is only like $19,000 for their income on one of those programs, and the other one is based on some other parameters. But we just think if they looked at those numbers again, it may be time to evaluate that and raise those numbers. And again, it was hard to give you a fiscal note because we aren't telling them how to do it because it's going to impact their budget more than us, which ultimately impacts us. But those are just some fiscal things that we looked at on these top 6 items.
Okay, so those are the priority items that would be advanced. Are there questions or comments? Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that we put one more item to the top, and that deals with under the unfunded mandate issue, and that deals with DMV. Is that, as many on this commission know, I've been extremely concerned about the subsidy level that we have in the past given to our DMV program and not recouped from the fees that are being charged there. And in just some recent information, I'm finding out that we're subsidizing this year to the tune of about $500,000, which I mistakenly or whatever I assumed, I was under the impression that we had finally gotten it to a point, based on the previous budgets that we've worked up, that it was at a break-even situation. Well, now I'm finding out that we're about $500,000 behind, and it looks like next year for the 2019 budget, we're going to be about $730,000 behind. My request is that we move the Kansas Treasurers Association request that promotes our ability to charge fees that pay for that service here at whatever levels needed, and that we are given as much flexibility or freedom to make procedural and processing changes that we seem to have had so much difficulty in dealing with DOR. So I'm asking that we, number one, push that item to the top, and number two, not only with that as being our item, encouraging or requesting that the Kansas Association of Counties put that at one of their priority items too.
Okay, well, I certainly don't have any problem with supporting the treasurer's option in that regard. So, and I'm sure it'll be a topic before the KAC legislative process also. Yeah. Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of points. Ms. Green, it would have been helpful to get the fiscal notes before the meeting. you offered a lot of information. It was great information, but trying to digest it and understand it on the spot is challenging. Just so you know, I struggle with that because I do like to have that linkage, and I did raise that question a couple of weeks ago, and I had hoped to have it before now. So I do appreciate having it, but how to process that at the moment makes it a challenge, just an observation. And in terms of what Mr. Klicka offered, I don't have any preferences about moving it to the top or leaving it where it is. But at some point, everything's at the top and then nothing's at the top. So that's a challenge, I think, for our lobbyists to deal with, and Ms. Green. I do have some reservations, though, and Mr. Franzen was kind enough to give me a little bit of a briefing, and I think that the proposal that is being offered by the state treasurers goes to the point
that's what
you're raising. The challenge I have is that it really looks like it's another hidden tax increase, and we're not upfront about it, and that's what bothers me about all of these issues. That's why I raised it a couple of weeks ago to try to understand that. And your logic to a degree makes sense, and I don't object to it, but what else is in here, and what is the impact on us and whoever the stakeholder that is impacted, and what are they paying, or what will be the impact? And
Mr.
I struggle with that.
Well, let me say this. The other part of that is this is a user fee, in effect. And we have encouraged our constituents to use alternative methods of accomplishing DMV requirements rather than going into the office. And that's been a major part of our effort. So those who do not have vehicles, the $500,000 that we have to provide, quite frankly, if you don't have a vehicle but you pay a property tax, you still have to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So I think there is some fairness to those who have to access the work, pay a fair share.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to your point, and philosophically I agree with you about user fees, but my understanding from Mr. Franzen, I see him in the audience, is that by changing the structure of these fees into a single fee, those people that had been trying to reduce costs for us and for themselves are actually being penalized because they're being wrapped into this new fee, and they'll be paying more even though they have dutifully tried to use technology, cut down the costs of human processing. So I struggle with that.
Mr. Franzen, can you speak to that?
Good morning, Tom Franzen, County Treasurer. It's a pleasure listening to us talk about motor vehicle this morning because it's a subject near and dear to my heart. Saying that, I've had a chance to brief a number of you on the County Kansas Treasurers Association's proposed legislation that they are still in the process of working with a few legislators on finalizing. But the gist of it is to go ahead and simplify a very confusing revenue model when it comes to providing general motor vehicle services in the title and registration area. That said, our analysis shows that the proposal that will be coming forward is a net increase of $2.54 per transaction. So in the bigger scheme, if you look at it, this is supposed to be a fee-based model. It is, in Johnson County, supported by general fund revenues. Knowing that, we are supportive because we're trying to get this back to where the fees pay for the operation. And if you look at it in the simplistic form, we have a number of fees that are confusing, and we think it benefits our taxpayers by having it simplified where there's one primary fee for county services. The county service fee has not changed for over 10 years. The operation continues to get more work from the state level, and we struggle to go ahead and meet those needs of what the state expects with a fixed revenue model. So that's why the treasurers have come together to try and look for a way that makes sense for the customers and still covers the local government operation of a state-mandated service.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Klicka?
Tom, as you know, I'm very supportive of pushing this item to the top and getting some attention. I've heard over the last 6 years how some of the processes and procedures of DOR have not changed in order to give you more flexibility and more efficiency in the office. So while I'm okay with the fee-based model that's being used, I'm also looking at the other side of the issue, is that we take, and the treasurers and this county and whatever, take a more active approach in articulating what processes and procedures can be changed in order to help reduce the burden on a day-to-day basis and in processing tags. So I definitely feel like we should not bury this item, Cindy. This needs to come to the top. It's one of those, it's part of our basic thing here at the bottom there of dealing with unfunded mandates. And $500,000 to $750,000 that we're going to continue dealing with this item is being taken away from mental health and other services that we have to deal with. So I'm pretty strong on this item.
Any other questions on what would be the top priorities, including the treasurer's approach to DMV fees? Mr. Ashcraft?
Mr. Chairman, this is not a new item. It's a follow-on. Mr. Franzen's comments, I think, addressed the change that was being proposed, but it did not address the question in terms of the impact, which I was trying to share with you, of those users who have been using the system effectively for themselves and for the county. Will they be paying an additional fee or more in a fee than before? In our conversation, Mr. Franzen, of about 2 weeks ago, that was my understanding. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, Commissioner, you're correct in our conversation. And what I was pointing out was the fact that there are populations that are impacted by this change. What I would encourage the board to consider is, at this point in time, while we have used a facility fee to change behaviors on the majority of people renewing their vehicles and going online or through the mail, which theoretically saves us money, that population has grown to such a large amount. That's over 80% of our registration renewals. So we've gotten past the point of behavior change. This is about general funding of the operation, and we have a significant cost burden associated with providing the state mandated service. Now, that said, while we got the population to do the right thing, it's also important to remember that the population still needs to support the overall cost structure associated with this. And in my mind, it's time for a fee increase to go ahead and support the entire operation.
And you said the net increase would be $2?
Based on our numbers here in Johnson County, $2.54.
Good. All right. Thank you. Any other comments?
Commissioner Brown.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a couple of questions on items on our legislative platform. Specifically, Ms. Green, 2.2, statewide expansion of Medicaid. Can you tell me what are the strings attached to accepting that money from the federal government?
I cannot answer that question at this moment, but I would be happy to get you an answer.
Who can? Do we have someone in the room that can?
I forgot to introduce that our lobbyists are with us here today, John Federico and Stephen Durst, and it looks like they are moving to the podium.
Thank you.
See if they have answers.
Good morning. John Federico with Federico Consulting. The concern of those opposed to Medicaid expansion are that the federal matching funds, I believe, would be 90-10 right now, 90 federal, 10 state. The fear is that they dangle that out there for you to pass legislation to accept more people on the Medicaid rolls, and then they lower that matching fee. That's been the concern. How that helps shape your opinion on what to do with that issue, I would leave up to you. That's been the argument.
Okay, thank you.
If I could make just a quick comment on that, Chairman. I have a huge concern about Medicaid expansion, not for the people that it helps. I'm good with that. We need to put more money into certain systems to fortify and support those that need the services of Medicaid. I struggle with getting on the hook as a county, as a state. with something where there's an unknown. As Mr. Federico pointed out, the funding revenue is 90-10. In my opinion, that's a carrot. It adds to the federal debt, national debt. It is a matter of time before that program gets cut. And once we've got those folks on that program, what do we do then? It is my opinion that the state should be considering an option where the citizens of Kansas vote and make a decision about enhanced funding for Medicaid, and we do that as a state, and we leave the federal government out of our affairs on that topic, such that we do not have to deal with them. So that would be my recommendation to the legislature. It also would be my opinion relative to 2.2 in our state legislative platform. I do not agree with that topic at all, Chairman.
Okay. Well, I would simply say this, you know, the fact of the matter is our taxpayers under the current system are paying an additional $3.5–4 million a year of local dollars because the state refuses to participate in an enhanced federal Medicaid program. So we can be concerned about the state. I'm concerned about our local taxpayers who, with no action out of the state, they will continue to pay an increasing amount of local tax dollars to provide the uncompensated services that in about 50% of the time could be covered by the enhanced Medicaid. So by turning our back on enhanced Medicaid, we are assuring that our local taxpayers are going to continue to pay an ever-increasing portion of that uncompensated services. So that's my concern.
Okay, and I understand that, and I appreciate your perspective there. I would point out that our local Johnson County taxpayers are also Kansas taxpayers and federal taxpayers. So it's the same pool of money any way you divide it. I'm simply saying maintaining control locally at the state as opposed to allowing the federal government to control the dollars. That's my point.
Well, okay. Mr. Allen.
You know, this is a unique situation. The perspective I would bring besides the fiscal notes would be the human cost by expanding those services, that you have the opportunity to help mental health services. You have a broad range of medical issues in this county. Our demographics are changing. People are coming to this county because of the quality of services that are available from many different institutions, and frankly, the services that are available from the county. So the more services that you can provide and provide those health and help people to move beyond their maybe drug or alcohol issues and become productive members of society is, to me, the more important factor. In my opinion, it's the right thing to do to get people the help when they need it. A lot of times there's so many additional costs because they end up in a high-cost emergency room, that they're not getting the services that could potentially get a lower level cost of service that would be more efficient. But the more important thing is get the help, get them back to where they need to be. So besides the fiscal cost of the county is important, I think the human cost of helping people, the majority of this, I don't know the count, but I think it's 37 or 38 states have passed this. And I understand there could be a fiscal note, but I'm sorry, in Kansas, there's some, in my opinion, there's been a loss between, you know, they say you're going to save this money here, but when you're dealing with tens of thousands of people's lives, and to be able to provide that additional service, there's a tremendous cost there that if those people were covered, you would change the overall demographics of that population. And to me, there's benefits that obviously would help those individuals, and economically it could come back. So I know it's an issue that's difficult for people, but I know it passed once in the legislature. I don't know what it would do currently, but we would see.
Okay. Mr. Clickett, did you have a comment?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm really caught in a pickle on this one with Medicaid issue, but Commissioner Allen, I tend to yield to basically what you're saying there from the standpoint that I am extremely concerned about our mental health program here in Johnson County. And I've seen how that budget's been beaten up over the years, and I see the ever increasing need. And then I take a look at our public safety side, and knowing that if we don't deal with mental health head on, the cost impact to our public safety, it just goes rampant. So I'm I'm going to support the issue, the Medicaid issue in this case, recognizing the concerns I have for Johnson County. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go a step further and say, or ask you the question, is it your intention that what we're going to do here, first of all, is at least vote on the first and I'm asking, it'll be including the DMV item.
Correct.
At least this first portion of the agenda, vote on that, and then determine what we do with that secondary list?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I thought I outlined that, but.
I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I heard Mr. Brown say, and Mr. Brown, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that what I heard him say is that he understands and appreciates and supports the needs of Kansans and Johnson Countyans, but what he is struggling with is the short-term benefits and the long-term benefits and the short-term costs and the long-term costs. And as the lobbyist pointed out, the fear is, and Mr. Brown, I have heard this many times too, is that the federal government has kind of a bait and switch type of approach on programs like this, and by buying into it, we may see some short-term benefits, but and there was some de-escalation of funding. I've seen several models, but that if depending on how rapidly it could come, it could have a severe impact on state budgeting. Am I hearing what you were saying and putting it in my words?
You've re-summarized my point exactly. Thank you.
Okay, well, and I think that's a fair observation. Now, I don't have an answer to that. You know, maybe the federal government will continue to always print more money than it has, but the question I have is, with models like that, is are they sustainable? And by supporting this, and if we go this way, it backs us into a certain model, and if that happens, we're stuck with it. And your longer-term perspective, I think, is valid. And like Commissioner Klicka, I'm torn here because I'd like to say, well, if it were free money and we could do it, do it. But I'm not there yet. I don't see that, so
okay.
I have those reservations.
Thank you. If there's no further comments, a motion would be in order to approve we had 5, now we have 6. Is that correct, Cindy?
No, we had 6, and now we would have 7. Could I ask for clarity on the 7 one with motor vehicle? So was that all of 3.9 for motor vehicle, or you just want to focus on what the treasurer's plan is? Okay.
The treasurer's plan.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Mr. Allen?
I would move for approval of the 6 items plus the addition of the treasurer item for our main platform.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the 6 items as noted with addition of the treasurer's proposal platform. Motion has been made and seconded. Further comments? Mr. Ashcraft.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Clarification on Ms. Green's question about the treasurer versus all of 3.9. What are we carving out there? I'm not sure I understood what.
Well, a motor vehicle had several things in regards to processes that they would like to see taken care of, and the focus is going to be just on this change in the fee structure. One of the other ones was in regards to putting mail. Pardon me?
Both processes and the fees.
You want all of 3.9. That's what Commissioner Klicka was talking about, was all of 3.9.
Okay.
Yeah, I want both the deal I'm requesting is that we deal both with not only the fee structure, but also the processes and to improve the processes and so forth.
Which the main one we have mentioned in there is the digital license plate that we'd like the decal to go with that mailing.
Oh,
Do the whole shoot match.
All right.
So, all right, that's.
Do I need to?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and the second?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? All right, the motion is before us. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Brown.
No.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. All right, now we'll turn to the balance of the legislative platform. Are there specific questions about items? Mr. Klicka?
This thing is going in and out here. I'd like to just throw this out to the commissioners. My inclination is, and in fact, I'm probably not going to support the balance of the legislative agenda. I'd like to, it seems to me that this agenda is so big, and I realize it's all the secondary stuff is to give John and his team at least an idea when those questions come up where we stand. But I'm not ready to make position on any of these items, and I would just like to see us stay focused on the top 7 items, make our agenda extremely simple, and keep our guys in Topeka very, very focused on trying to work for this and not have it muddied up anymore. That's my thought.
Okay. Well, that is an annual question. That occurs.
Can I make that as a motion?
Occurs.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we do not, that we not include all the rest of the stuff in our agenda.
Second.
Okay, well, I am opposed to that. I think it's important that we speak to other issues, quite frankly. Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion second, so I'll talk about the agenda as it relates to that
Thank
item.
you. The motion has been made and seconded to eliminate the balance of the legislative platform other than the 7 items that were previously approved. Mr. Ashcraft.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have hesitations about the rest of the agenda also because, legislative agenda, because it does not include anything related to the potential sales tax exemption on food and medicine. And I had raised this issue a few weeks ago, Mr. Chairman, that we don't even have a neutral position, because I could support it if it included a comment or a position related to at least recognizing that going forward the state should uncouple its sales tax on food and medicine from the other sales tax, because I think there needs to be relief there. That goes to the core of, I think, our most vulnerable populations. That's those old people out there like I sometimes have been referred to now, and that's a cost that impacts them directly. And we don't even have a position on it. That was a hot topic during the election. Our lobbyists pointed out that it probably will be a topic of discussion, and there's nothing that even mentions our position on that. And so I have reservations there. The second thing I have concerns about is that I've raised this issue repeatedly, and it has to do with the use of TIFs and the county's position on this use of TIFs in the state and by the cities. And we are constantly bombarded by TIF requests, and we have no position and no standing to address them effectively, even though they have substantial ongoing impact on us. And I have asked for some kind of address on that to at least bring it to the attention of the legislature to recognize that the county is impacted, and how it's impacted affects our ability to fund many of the very services, as Mr. Brown pointed out, on Medicaid. That money could be used for direct social services, direct support, but yet it just, in not all cases, but too many cases, it appears to go to the benefit of a select group, and I have reservations.
Well, fine. If you want to address those, then the current motion needs to be defeated. So, any other comments? All right, any questions about the motion before us? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Klicka?
Yes.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
Chairman Eilert?
Yes. And what is the vote count?
3 yes, 4 no.
Okay, so.
Motion fails.
Failed.
I think you want to vote no.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Change my vote to no.
Yeah, there you go. I was wondering where we were.
Did that a few weeks ago.
Yeah. All right.
Is it
Now,
too
what
late,
is the-
Chairman? Okay.
Pardon?
I was just asking if it was too late.
No, not for me. All right, so the motion was defeated, is that right?
Correct.
All right. Now, other items that commissioners would like to speak to. Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Chairman, I have spoken to the two that I have great interest in and would like to have considered by this body included in the extended agenda or supplemental agenda that we're talking about now.
The balance of the legislative platform.
The balance of the legislative platform. Thank you. And the first is some kind of position on food and medicine sales tax, and that we have recognized it and we have a position one way or the other. Personally, I would like to at least see it decoupled or uncoupled from sales tax in general, so it can be dealt with separately in the future, if not this legislative session by the legislature.
Okay. Well, my understanding from conversations with legislators, and I think Mr. Federico mentioned it last week, this is probably not going to be actively, it might be discussed, but any action is probably going to wait till the next session, which is just before the election. I think there is room for the state to lower the sales tax on food and pharmaceuticals. Again, I would remind us that the bulk of the sales tax in Johnson County is paid to the state of Kansas, something like 6%.
Yep. And Chairman, I actually do have some fiscal notes on this. I just didn't go into the fiscal notes on the rest of the platform.
Okay. Well,
6.5 is what the fiscal note is.
6.5.
Sales tax.
6.5 what?
6.5% is the sales tax. Oh, the whole fiscal note that comes in?
Yeah.
That I don't have in front of me. I
Okay.
just have what the loss would be. It'd be $455 million if they got rid of all sales tax on food. And just to give you, if you just took a 0.1% decrease, it'd be 6.5 to 7 million for each 1/10. If they want to decrease too.
You know, I think that puts us in a position of telling the state legislature what to do, and we are many times concerned about the state legislature telling us what to do. So I don't want to get into that kind of a hypocritical position. You know, I think it's important to think about Johnson County sales tax. The first sales tax was in 1975, a half cent. The county gets 25% of that. 75% goes to the cities. Yep. And we have two additional quarter-cent sales taxes, public safety, dedicated to public safety, and about 1/3 of those proceeds go to the cities. We also have a quarter-cent sales tax, which was just authorized by the voters. The two public safety sales tax were authorized by the voters, and they continue, but those proceeds are to be dedicated for public safety. And then we have the recent quarter-cent sales tax, which, again, is for the courthouse, the medical examiner's office. That has an expiration date, a maximum of 10 years. So some of these, at least the last 10-year project, if we don't have full recovery of those sales tax receipts, then if we miss the mark at the end of 10 years, then we're going to have to come up with additional revenue. Now, there's also a 1/10 of a cent stormwater sales tax, and there's an 1/8 of a cent Johnson County Education Research sales tax. We receive no part of those. Those are dedicated tax sources. So I don't have any problem initiating a discussion with our legislative delegation about what the possibilities are of a reduction in sales tax on food, pharmaceuticals, but to advocate that they need to do something, I suppose is okay, but I don't want to get into a position of telling the state what to do when we resist their telling us what to do. Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Chairman, I think in part I understand and agree with what you're saying, but I would argue the entire platform is trying to tell the state what we want them to do in some sense or another. And I think that just having a position, and maybe the position is that we do not have a position, is enough, that we are willing to work with the legislature and the community to move forward. We recognize that it is an issue. The point I raised is, for me, at least decoupling it, removing it from any future consideration on sales taxes would begin to show some relief to a population that pays heavily on a regressive tax. So,
Well, if there's, you know, if the idea is to have a statement, in our platform suggesting or suggesting that the state review reducing the sales tax on food and pharmaceuticals, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. And if you want to make that motion, go right ahead.
Okay.
You have a comment there?
Yes, I think I also could support maybe a statement that we support an incremental decrease of sales tax on food and pharmaceutical sales.
That's fine.
Again, I would stress incremental because I don't think you can do that all at one time.
Oh, and I'm not advocating
Okay,
that.
yeah.
I'm not advocating that. And you,
Mr. Federico, did you have a comment you
Wait a
want to
minute.
make?
I thought you were advocating.
I thought you were advocating. What are you saying? I'm advocating decoupling it from the future. Mr. Allen is talking about limiting it to incremental decreases, which is fine, but I'm not advocating eliminating the sales tax. I mean, that would be a fiscal note that even I could not swallow.
Okay. Mr. Federico.
These comments are not to influence your decision, but maybe provide some caution. Any reduction in the sales tax on food will come at a cost. So if you're going to take steps to endorse any position in support of reducing it, you might want to consider verbiage in there that says, while preserving support of other important services of the state or whatever is important to you, but put some language in there that balances out, yes, we're in favor of this, but not at the cost of that, respectfully.
Well, perhaps the motion could simply state that we would support a review of an incremental reduction in sales tax on food and pharmaceuticals, and that decision has to be considered in light of statewide programs that need funding.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Klicka.
Well, conceptually, I can understand what Commissioner Ashraf is asking for, but I can't support it because then I'd be running inconsistent with my previous motion on the, that I feel like any further down this agenda we go, we lose any type of influence with the state legislature as far, and our controls, by removing and watering down these items that they're not high priority. I just see it as a piece of paper that's going to go on their desk and fall into the trash.
Okay.
And so there's no disrespect to you. It just seems like it's
Well, Mr. Chairman,
a waste of time.
I will make
Let's
the
get
motion.
a motion.
And if it fails for lack of a second, then I appreciate at least having the conversation at the dais, but I would hope there might be a second somewhere.
Let's hear the motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the motion, and you said it more eloquently than I did, was that we would favor the state reviewing an incremental reduction in food and medicine sales tax, assuming or presuming that there would be full and fair consideration of the impact that reduction would have on state programs and operations currently funded, something along those lines. You said it much better than I did.
I understand your intent. The wordsmiths will work on that, including that intent, so.
I would second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, if not, clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
No.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Chairman Eilert.
Yes. Motion carried. Any other items? All right, Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Adams. Who's Mr. Adams?
What time is it?
Mr. Chairman,
What time is
yes.
it?
My second comment earlier had to do with the use of TIFs and the lack of a position for us concerning the use of TIFs by state entities. I don't offer concerns that TIFs are inherently bad, but I do have concerns that what they have evolved to and the impact that it has on county revenues and county funding is significant, and would like to have something in the platform that asks the state to review TIFs to better hone the original intent for brownfield development, and it could include such things as the cap, for example, that Overland Park has for TIFs, and such things as we've talked about carve-outs for transit or carve-outs for IDD supports, and have something in there that recognizes the impact on the county. And it could, as far as I'm concerned, it could go as far as the county having the right to review and approve TIFs before they become official doctrine in local government.
Well, I would be strongly opposed to that. The cities make the decision. They are the ones that are providing the bulk of the economic success for our county. And I think, as you indicated, Overland Park, the cities can review their own particular situation and include restrictions in those projects. So I think we've all benefited from the decisions that the cities have made in regards to economic development, and I do not want to see the county commission getting in the position of picking and choosing which project in which city will move forward. You talk about political influence. I think we need to avoid that kind of process. So I will not support that.
Wait a minute, you just supported the last deal here for, I'm just trying to find out where the consistencies are on our philosophy here, but
Well,
I thought
I
it was basically our intention that we did not feel we should tell the state what they should do, which is within their purview. But we just passed a motion here that basically is kind of moving in that direction, so
Okay.
whatever.
All right. Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we include language in the platform, the state platform, asking the state to review and reconsider the use of TIFs and how it impacts county revenues and county operations more equitably and more fairly.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any questions or comments? All right, if not, the motion is to include that. Mr. Brown?
I do. I just wanted to make a comment before we vote. I had a conversation with an elected from one of our local cities who just yesterday made the comment to me that it would be beneficial to have some more guidance on the TIF, CID, STAR bonds, any of the financing mechanisms, such that it leveled the playing field between the cities, as opposed to everyone coming to each city with their hand out asking for everything that they can get. If there were limits, statutory limits, as opposed to city-by-city limits. If there were statutory limits, it was his opinion, and that is a local city, and a highly elected in that local city, coming to me and saying, please support that and make sure that that gets said. So I'm conveying the message to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you.
Well, then I would suggest those cities need to advance that in their own platforms. And whether it's one city official or a majority of the officials in that city, I don't know. But I'd suggest if that's a desire of a city, a mayor or a city council member, they should pursue that in their own platform, quite frankly.
I understand. They came to me as the commissioner representing one of that particular city and asked me to carry that message forward, and that's what I've done. Thank you.
Any questions about the motion before us? Mr. Ashcraft?
Just an additional comment, Mr. Chairman. I continue to struggle with this because we do not even receive cost-benefit analysis of projects passed. I'm sure many of them have been beneficial, have had wonderful outcomes, but there is no tracking of that. And we, last year, I think, almost budgeted $3 million in general funds to cover TIF, I'll call them losses, because of the TIFs that currently operate out there. And the total cost of TIF monies that go back into the developers' pockets up until a couple of years ago was almost $10 million a year. Those fees, those costs do not go directly to services. They go to enrich developers. And sometimes when it's a brownfield development, I think that makes perfect sense. I think it's very arguable. But many times, especially when a developer talks about it being the hottest property in Johnson County, but yet needing hundreds of millions of dollars in tax relief, it's just mind-boggling for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. Any other comments? The motion before us is to include some kind of, encourage the state to include some kind of restrictions or review on TIF projects. Again, I'm going to vote in opposition to that motion. No further comment. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Kleka?
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
No. Motion failed. Are there any other items to be considered in the general platform?
Chairman, I have an item I'd like to discuss. Thank you. 3.7, which would allow the county appraiser to request information from a taxpayer. I have problems with the expanding powers of the appraiser's office from where we stand now. And I do believe that in asking for the information and pushing the legislature to make it statutory that it is incumbent upon a taxpayer and a property owner to supply the listed paperwork in 3.7, I believe the county is only seeing the upside of that information. And in the event that there is no revenue, there is no tenant, there is no revenue, I believe 3.8, we cannot support 3.8 in opposition to what has been called the dark store theory if we're going to use information in 3.7 to determine valuation based on the money that a business makes within the box. I think it's contradictory. 3.7 and 3.8, in my opinion, contradict each other. Such that if we push for 3.7, we're risking endorsing the dark store theory, as it's been called, and it was my understanding from our discussions over the last couple of years, at least, that was not a position as a board we wanted to take.
Yeah. Well, I would disagree with that analysis respectfully, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
The dark store theory relates to hypothetical conditions. And hypothetical conditions are different than having accurate information presented to the appraiser. The item is supported statewide by the appraisers. And it is my understanding that if this information were presented at the informal hearings, accurate information given to the appraiser, then fair values could be determined and, in fact, could preclude an appeal to the Board of Tax Appeals. If there is an appeal of that informal decision without that information, when it gets to the Board of Tax Appeals, the information does become available. So why not make that information available at the informal hearing and avoid potentially going to the Board of Tax Appeals? We have a system now where items before the Board of Tax Appeals may sit there for a year or 2 years before they're decided. And again, the information will be presented at the Board of Tax Appeals. Why not present the information at the informal hearing so a fair and just value can be determined? That's my point.
So then from what I heard you say, Chairman, then as the Board of County Commissioners and as Johnson County, for instance, the former Best Buy store at 119th and Strang Line has been sitting empty. If they can demonstrate that store has had zero income, and it has, well, I don't know, Halloween store was in there, I think, but has had relatively no income or none, then will their top property tax bill be lowered?
It always is. The appraisal
because it's empty?
the appraisal always goes down if it's empty.
Okay.
Now, if it's not empty, the dark store theory says, even though thousands of people go through my business every day, it's empty. So a building that's legitimately empty, the value is reduced. Absolutely.
That is, I don't disagree, but that is contrary to what I was told by folks who are involved in the arguing against the appraisal process. That is different than what I was told. So I'll follow up on that part.
Very good. Thank you.
I would also, to your point about backing the backlog at our Board of Tax Appeals, I believe we should add an item to this legislative agenda that encourages, be it using KDOT's map for regions or divide the state into quarters or by population, somehow, some way, get a three-person Board of Tax Appeals spread out across the state to lessen the load for our taxpayers having, and our county administration having to go to Topeka to fight. If we had a three-member Property Tax Review Board, BOTA, local, that handled Johnson, Douglas, and Wyandotte County, for instance, that encouraging regional or some subset Board of Tax Appeals to carry the load instead of backing up the entire state based on Johnson County's appeals, which are an inordinate amount, even based on the number of parcels of property we have compared to other counties, I think it would smooth out the process for everybody. I'd like to see that added to our...
That's entirely possible, and whether that's the exact change that would occur, I don't think there's any doubt changes need to be made in the BOTA structure.
Totally agree.
That's an understatement.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion? Mr. Allen?
I'd move for approval of the balance of the legislative agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the balance of the legislative agenda as presented. Any further comments or questions? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
No?
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Brown.
No.
And Chairman Eilert.
Yes. I have 4 in favor. Motion
Correct.
passed. Thank you all very much. Next item.
Phew, glad we're done with that one.
Item number 14, consider renewing contracts relating to transit services with Reveal Management Services Incorporated, First Transit Incorporated, and 1010 Taxi for additional 2-year terms at a total cost not to exceed $8,592,011 for 2019, and a total cost not to exceed $8,849,771 for 2020.
Chairman, Commissioners, Josh Powers from the Manager's Office. This item pertains to the extension of our current transportation contract options for our third-party transit vendors, Reveal Management Services, First Transit, and 1010 Taxi. You'll recall that we had an initial contract period of 3 years with the option for 2 2-year extensions. This would represent the final option for 2 years for 19 and 20. Then these contracts would be rebid for 21 going forward. Just for clarification, Reveal Management Services provides scheduling and coordinated dispatching services for our transportation operations. First Transit serves as the operator of our services, including our Ride KC fixed and commuter routes, our Freedom, which is formerly Special Edition, and Swift, Sheltered Workforce Industrial Fixed Transportation Services, and are responsible for maintaining our transit fleet. 1010 Taxi provides our door-to-door on-demand transportation. Exercising these options allow us to provide a continuity of service for our transportation services for our riders and clients, but they're not automatic. Each of these vendors are held to contractual KPIs that we track on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis that include on-time performance, pickup performance, and in-vehicle riding time. We can delve into the numbers there, but suffice it to say that over the past 2 years, each of these vendors has exceeded the KPIs that they are contractually obligated to provide. It's important to also note that nothing in extending this option for 2 years would preclude the county from reducing service, expanding service, or ending service in total. We have the right of terminating our contract for convenience or for cause, and so we really are in the driver's seat as far as what the Board of County Commissioners concludes to be in the best interests of Johnson County. That's important. We do have a attachment that from this item that should be brought up. It's important because there are a number of items happening over the next 2 years, both on Johnson County side and the KCATA side, that will influence what we are doing in the years 2021 and beyond. Dick Gerald from the KCATA is here. He's happy to speak to what KCATA is doing. But as you may remember, we have undertaken a comprehensive operations analysis. The recommendations of that analysis will come forward to this body in January. It recommends a number of different adjustments to our system, including suspending some service, reducing other services, and using those savings to reinvest in more frequency on the productive routes that we want to keep. We're also going to be in front of you both at agenda review today and next week with a microtransit pilot. That's an alternative service delivery that will impact what we do going into the future. And then ATA is also embarking in 2019 on a complete system redesign, and they're looking at a similar service adjustment as we are, which is where can we introduce alternative, on-demand, small vehicle, Uber-like services as a way to support and perhaps reduce fixed route services. So this is important because in 2019, both Johnson County and ATA are looking at large wholesale changes to the way we provide transit. In 2020, we anticipate issuing the RFP for the additional services. That's important from a timing perspective because we need to understand the impacts of both our operations analysis, ATA's system redesign, and whether or not our microtransit pilot is successful, which we obviously hope it will be. So we want to have that RFP reflect what we're going to be doing in the future, not what we're doing today. So I would leave it just to say that in consultation with the Johnson County Transportation Council and with the KCATA, and in light of the fact that our vendors have outproceeded the metrics that we track in our contract, with them, we would recommend that we exercise these options for additional 2 years for a total cost not to exceed $17,441,782 for both years. These options allow us to lock in savings on these contracts that otherwise would, without a doubt, go up if we were to have to renegotiate them now. So with that, both myself and Dick will be happy to stand for questions.
Okay, this item is for the contract only. You mentioned the pilot program. That's on the agenda review.
That's correct, sir.
Right. Okay, Mr. Klicka, do you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the board pulling this off the agenda here, continuing this so we could take a little bit more look at it. Josh, as I told you, originally I was not interested in extending this contract here. And just so everyone knows, I've always been extremely and continue to be supportive of transit. But the way we're doing it today, the way we've been doing it for the last 3, 4, 5 years, or even beyond that, is not sustainable. I've requested in all efforts, an all-out effort, to figure out new models in dealing with transit. Moving 2 or 3 people on a big 45-passenger bus just doesn't make sense. And that's the reason I asked for this to be pulled, because essentially a bulk of this service that we're paying for in this contract deals with the 45-foot buses. It's not we have the paratransit in there also, but the high cost item happens to be that the movement of 45. I'm agreeing with this based on your assurance and legal counsel's assurance. I'm going to go ahead for this reason, that we're fixing the cost for 2 years, okay? That all we're doing here is we're going to at least guarantee the cost for the service that we're going to use relative to First Transit for the next 2 years. You all have given me assurance that we can modify that, the level of service, up, down, around, or whatever, without any penalty or renegotiation over the next 2 years, or completely cancel it and do something different.
You're correct.
And in that fashion, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to make the motion to
Let's
move
see
this
if there are other
forward.
questions or comments. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. Josh, perhaps you can answer this. Maybe you'll meet Mr. Gerald. But what portion of the money that we're being asked to put forward for this 2-year contract renewal, what dollar amount or percentage is dedicated specifically to marketing?
So we have the ability, we have a line item that in the 2018 budget was set at $75,000, and we are on track to expend every penny of that. And we talked, thankfully for your time, to talk about what our marketing efforts have been. As we go into developing the 2020 budget, I mean, currently that line item is at $75,000 for 19. We can step it up. The idea was we wanted to see how the marketing effort went, and perhaps we do need to increase that amount, but that's something that we are able to do.
Clarification. There is no market. This is purely operational contracts right here. We have a contract with ATA that includes $75,000 for marketing. So, Commissioner, this contract that we're looking at is purely with First Transit that operates the buses and the paratransit, Reveal that does the scheduling, and our relationship with 1010 Taxi, which does further paratransit. This contract does not include any marketing.
You're correct. I apologize. I misunderstood. That's our budget internally to transit. But yes, these contracts do not include a marketing component. That's on us and ATA.
Other questions? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Josh. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? Being no one to be heard, it's back for the commission. Mr. Allen, did you have a motion?
Mr. Clicker wanted
Mr. Clicker?
I move to approve the renewal of the agreements entered for transit-related services under RFP 2013-037 with Reveal Management Services for an amount not to exceed $603,209 for 2019 and an amount not to exceed $621,305 for 2020. First Transit, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $7,197,695 for 19, and an amount not to exceed $7,413,626 for 2020, and 1010 Taxi for an amount not to exceed $791,107 for 2019, and an amount not to exceed $814,840 for 2020. And further authorize the chairman to sign on behalf of the board 2-year renewal agreements with these service providers for a total amount not to exceed $17,441,782 for 2019 and 2020.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the 2-year contract as noted for transit services. Are there any other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. A unanimous vote.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
Nice.
Wow, wow.
Not bad, is it?
If my recording is correct.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
All right, we'll turn to reports and communications. Ms. Post Oak Ferguson.
Chairman, I have no report today. Thank you.
Very good. Turning to commission comments, I'll remind you, we have an executive session, and we have agenda review, and we have groundbreaking.
Are you recommending no comments from the commissioners? Okay.
Commission comments, we'll start with Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you. I have 7, but I will, in the interest of time, I'll cut it down to 2 very important ones. And the most important event that occurred last week, that's Thursday evening. I'm an architect, as you know. I belong to the AIA, and we had a Kansas City AIA annual holiday party, and our own Joe Waters received a special award, Architectural Advocate of the Year. Joe, congratulations.
Very good. Very good.
Also, Tuesday afternoon, I had a pleasure to attend our 30th annual alumni and new member reception for Leadership Northeast, which is sponsored by the Northeast Johnson County Chamber. I was the original, one of the beginners of that particular, so I was in the first class 30 years ago. We've had over 550 candidates so far, and we're going to keep moving forward, and we welcomed 30 new candidates for this next year's process. I'll stop there, and most of us had some other things to visit about.
All right, thank you, Mr. Klicka.
I made my comments relative to PIO earlier.
Thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
Just one, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank the wastewater department staff yesterday for their annual Christmas event.
Yep.
Those men and women do great work. They're unsung heroes. Unfortunately, Susan Pekarik was not there, but Aaron was, and I hope he will pass on for me, and I think probably for all of us. Thank you for your work, and they always do a great, and they do the food themselves, I understand it, and except for your serving technique, Aaron, I think it was an outstanding event. No, you did great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen?
No comments.
Mr. Osterhaus?
Just one comment, if I could speak. Just one comment, if I could speak with the undersheriff in between meetings, that'd be great. I had some questions about Douglas County and their expansion of their jail and how many prisoners we house at our jail from Douglas County.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brown?
Go Chiefs, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of items, I'll make it brief. Friday night, attended the Fire District #1 Christmas party. It was a good time, good folks, good people, good food, and Santa appeared. So all is well at Fire District #1. On Wednesday, we had a Gravel Road Task Force meeting. Still sounds like the name of a country band to me. But the Gravel Road Task Force met, much was discussed. Commissioner Klicka and I were a part of that along with staff, and we continue to try and move the issues associated with dust and gravel forward. And then just a thank you to Johnson County Wastewater for the luncheon yesterday. Unsung heroes, as Commissioner Ashcraft said, folks that do a great job behind the scenes, and proud of all of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a reminder, I mentioned earlier, we will be attending a groundbreaking at about 1:30 for the medical examiner's office. I should also note that next week, our December 20th meeting will be at the Olathe City Hall, Council Chambers. Remodeling, some remodeling will be going on in this office. And then December 27th, there will be no meeting, and January 3rd, there will be no commission meeting. So next week will be our last meeting before our next meeting will then be January 10. So, okay, we do have a request on executive session. Mr. Allen.
Approximate time for agenda review, 10 minutes maybe?
We're going to have to do, I think, at least 30 minutes.
I must have misread something there.
There are several items.
Okay.
If you want to try it at, let's say, give us 20 minutes at
12 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah, 12:05, something like that.
Okay. Thank you. I'd move that the board recess its open meeting and convene an executive session at approximately 12:05 p.m. for a total of 15 minutes for the period of 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing personal matters of non-elected officials and to protect personal privacy, and for a period of 10 minutes to receive advice of counsel and to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and to reconvene an open session in this room at approximately 12:20 p.m. or soon thereafter as the executive session may end.
Second.
So the total request is for 15 minutes, right? Yes, okay.
If you say so.
All right. The motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer. Aye. Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. We are in recess, and we'll take a short break and come back for agenda review. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer. Here. Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Kluka. Here. Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider appointing Jason Myers as the 1st District Representative to the Transportation Council through August 31st, 2021. Item number 2, consider appointing Rebecca Galati as the 1st District Representative to the Museum Advisory Council through May 7th, 2020. Item number 3, consider accepting the Kansas Department of Health and Environment's KDHE Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, 1817 grant funding focused on cardiovascular disease prevention and management for a total amount not to exceed $170,000 annually for a period of 5 years for a total grant funding of $850,000, and authorize the reclassification of reserves in the amount of $170,000 for the fiscal year 2019 to increase overall budget authority to cover expenditures with grant revenues. And item number 4, consider an addendum to the agreement with the City of Lenexa to continue to occupy a portion of the building at 9224 Haskins Street in Lenexa, Kansas for MEDAC Station 1153.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Let's have a report on item number 3.
Good morning. My name is Megan Foreman. I'm with the Department of Health and Environment. And what we just wanted to talk to you about, the 1817 grant, is to continue some of the work that was started in 2015 with another grant from KDHE. What this does is promote community clinical linkages. The idea is really to take a population health approach to chronic disease prevention and management. So the goal of the grant is to help healthcare providers use their electronic medical records a little bit better and more efficiently to flag and treat high blood pressure, cholesterol, and prediabetes. Ultimately, these system changes would lead to cost savings and decreased illness in Johnson County citizens. These conditions identified lead to 3 of the top 5 leading causes of death in the county. So we're asking you to consider this now because we want to be ready to accept the contract from KDHE when it comes, which is expected in January. They're still working with the CDC, who's ultimately funding this right now on a final work plan. KDHE's success with this is actually contingent on Johnson County accepting these funds. In order to apply, they have to reach 900,000 people with the activities that they're doing, so Johnson County's population is an important part of that. No cash or indirect match is required. We're not asking for staff in conjunction with the grant, and much of the work will be completed by contractors who specialize in this sort of technology. And we will charge a portion of existing FTEs to the grant.
Okay, questions? Yeah. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with staying on consent, but I was hoping maybe Ms. Foreman or Ms. Marsh could visit with me before next week so I could just learn a little bit about the program metrics.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, this is an existing agreement with the City of Lenexa, which will be extended. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, going to item number 5 on the action agenda. Those are minutes. A couple of commissioners were absent, so that will remain on action. Next item, number 6.
Consider authorizing the reallocation and expenditure of fund balances, reserves for FY 2019 in the amount of $250,000 in the Transit Fund to implement a microtransit pilot program in Johnson County for a 6-month initial period in order to analyze efficiency and effectiveness of this alternative service delivery method.
Josh.
Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Josh Powers from the Manager's Office. As was described, this is a pilot program that we've developed in conjunction with KCATA that seeks to leverage new technology to provide new on-demand public transportation service that reflects the changing needs and wishes of the riding public. The pilot, which was developed with a third-party vendor called Transloc, would provide 3 vehicles serving the area of 63rd Street, Shawnee Mission Parkway on the north, Metcalf Avenue on the east, 119th Street on the south, and Renner Road on the west. That service area includes the KU Edwards campus, the Johnson County Community College campus, and the Mission Transit Center. And the Mission Transit Center obviously is an important connection hub for Johnson County and ATA routes. The proposed service would operate 14.5 hours a day from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and operates on what is called adaptive routing, which means that when multiple riders are traveling to a roughly same geographic area, the software pairs those riders and provides on-demand service. The service would charge a fare of $1.50, which is the same as our existing fixed route local service. We've set an aspirational goal of between 100 and 150 riders per day, with the goal of implementing additional service areas if the pilot is deemed to be successful. So we're asking for the budget authority to expend $250,000 from the transit budget reserves for this 6-month pilot. If the item is approved, we anticipate it beginning in mid-January of 2019 and running through mid-June of 2019. We will be tracking all the relevant KPIs along the way so that we'll be in a position to recommend back to this body whether the pilot should be extended, ended, or if this service should be included in our ongoing transit service provision. Tyler Means, who is the Innovative Service Manager for Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, was critical in developing this pilot. He's here with me, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to definitely wholeheartedly support this deal. My only frustration on all this, to me, it's 3 years late. I just wish we were moving in this direction a lot sooner. I do have a couple questions. Number one, I see this as running parallel with the existing fixed routes here, at least initially here, in that service area, correct?
Yes, sir.
If we see people move and shift into this, I'll call it Uber style or microtransit or flex service, whatever you want to call it, are we going to move and get rid of those routes and get them sooner than what is prior to the 6-month period?
The simple answer is that's the goal. That we do have some federal requirements that entail environmental justice, Title VI, public notice, but the goal is, yes, to reduce fixed route service with this kind of on-demand service.
Okay. I'm familiar with the concept that you're also doing. We did a pilot with this down at ATA, and it was not successful. I realize, Tyler, you've been working your butt off here literally to take the disadvantages or the problems that we had with Bridge, correct those, get those done to make this as flexible as possible. I'm looking forward to success.
Okay, all right.
But I'm not done, Chairman. But along this deal is that I hope the staff is working up for a Plan B or a Plan C to come into place, that if this concept does not work, that we're ready to get moving on. Okay?
Well,
and in that spirit.
Again, this is agenda review. Action will be taken next week. Anything else you want to add, Josh? Okay.
Right here.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm supportive of this conceptually. I think it's a step in the right direction. I would be interested maybe before next week if you could sit down and teach me a little bit about the metrics and how you're identifying and measuring success. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Jim, did you have a comment?
No, but this is up and operational elsewhere in the country. And the initial response.
Jim, can you get your mic on?
Speak up, Jim. Come on.
Josh, maybe at our Johnson County Transit meeting, this was an agenda item also, and I just wanted to stress is that this is up and running elsewhere in the country and has been very successful.
Yeah, we'll hope for good success out of this, but we'll remain on action. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item number 7, resolution number WD 18-047, request for proposal number 2018-031. Conduct a public hearing and consider authorizing funds for a total amount not to exceed $849,200 and consider awarding a contract with eBuilder Incorporated for a capital project management software solution.
Aaron.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Aaron Witt with Wastewater. I'll try to keep this brief and then answer any questions you have. We've historically used programs developed internally to manage our capital improvement program, and we've used several different platforms, like from spreadsheets to databases, those types of things. Often that required us to use shadow systems to do this. And so the tools no longer meet our needs, especially with our large, complex capital improvement program that we have, as well as the numerous small projects that we're managing each year. So as part of that, we reached out to other departments to evaluate that need, and Public Works and DTI were part of our initial needs assessment, looking at a tool. And then from this, we developed an RFP, and we received 4 proposals, and 3 were selected to be interviewed. The selection committee consisted of wastewater staff and public works staff. eBuilder was a top-ranked firm, and they have extensive industry experience with this type of software. There are other local utilities that utilize eBuilder, including Kansas City, Missouri, Shawnee, and Lawrence. The basis of cost in the proposal was based on the annualized cost of 10 years of service, including implementation and annual maintenance and support. The cost submitted ranged from $259,000 to $369,000. eBuilder had the second lowest overall cost, but the lowest initial implementation cost. The budget we had for implementation of this was $1 million, and the fee proposals submitted ranged from $685,000 to a little over $2 million. The funding request of $849,200 includes $759,200 for implementation and the first year of annual maintenance, $75,000 of contingency, and $15,000 for PAF. So the last thing I'll add is that Public Works will be a part of this initial implementation. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Well, this will be a public hearing, so I will hold my questions until the public hearing process. Mr. Ashcraft?
If we could visit beforehand, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Too.
All right, again, it will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 8, resolution number 106-18. Consider authorizing to amend the FY 2018-2022 Capital Improvement Program, CIP, to include the countywide radio system upgrade project in an amount not to exceed $3,150,000, and authorize an exception to competition and approving a 5-year equipment lease purchase contract with Motorola Solutions Incorporated to provide upgrades to the Johnson County Communications System in an amount not to exceed $3,136,678.
David.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Rotney with the Budget and Financial Planning Department. This briefing sheet here tries to do several things, one of which is to amend the 2018-2022 Capital Improvement Program. In so doing, establishing a project account for emergency management and communications for our countywide radio systems upgrade project in an amount of $3,150,000. And then also, this looks to have us enter into a 5-year equipment lease purchase contract with Motorola Solutions, Inc. To provide those upgrades to our communications system. In light of your schedule, I'm going to go ahead and just turn over to you guys for any questions you might have. I'm sure you have some. Ellen Warnke, Director of Emergency Management and Communications, is also here to help answer any questions you might have.
Any questions at this time? Mr. Ashcraft?
If we could just visit before next week, I have a few.
Thank you. We'll keep this on action. Next item.
Thanks.
Please note, the board is sitting as the governing board of Fire District Number 2 for item number 9 and number 10. Item number 9, consider approving the December 2018 payables for Fire District Number 2.
Chief, I assume you will have paychecks that Mr. Allen can sign.
Correct.
Will this be the last time?
Yeah, this will be the last round. We are
Okay.
nearly set up, so this will be the last round of the monthly payables.
Thank you very much. And item number 10?
Resolution number 2018-05. Consider holding a public hearing on or after 9:30 a.m. on December 20th, 2018 as the governing board of Johnson County, Kansas, acting as the Board of County Commissioners and as the governing board of Johnson County Fire District 2 for the purpose of receiving public input on proposed amendment to the FY 2018 budget for the general fund of the Johnson County Fire District Number 2, Kansas, and to consider adoption of Fire District Number 2 resolution amending the FY 2018 budget for general fund of the Fire District Number 2 of Johnson County, Kansas.
Yes, Chief.
Jim Francis, Fire District Number 2. This was being done, primarily being driven by the former Board of Directors' approval of the transition to Kansas Police and Fire retirement that began effective January of 2018. That added an additional $330,000 expenses that were unplanned. We were able to cut approximately $250,000 worth of expenses. So this year and the next few weeks, we're going to be very close on hitting the mark on whether we spend all the money budgeted or slightly go over. So we're being cautious to make sure that we don't do that.
Okay, well, as I recall, this was not unanticipated when the
That's
action
correct.
was
We
taken, is that
anticipated
right?
this action may have to occur last December when the board approved this.
Yeah. Well, again, this calls for a public hearing, so it will remain on action. Are there any other questions? Chief, thank you very much, and we will be in City Hall next week, so.
All right.
Show up. Any other items?
No, sir.
All right, that concludes our agenda review. We are adjourned. We continue in recess from our business session. We'll move into our executive session at 12:05. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Means we got 1 minute.
On the
The record will reflect that at approximately 12:20 PM, we reconvened in open session. We do have a couple of action items that need to be attended to. Mr. Klicka, do you have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve an exception to the board's compensation policies and authorize the county manager to negotiate and approve an amount of accrued vacation time and advanced accrual rate for the newly hired assistant county manager as proposed by the county manager.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the exception as noted. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Ashcraft.
Clarification, newly hired or pending new hire?
Newly
It
hired.
starts January 14th.
Okay, so, okay.
All right.
That's pending.
Any further questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Mr. Allen.
I would move that the board, sitting as the governing body of Fire District Number 2, authorize the county manager or her designee to conduct a performance evaluation of the fire chief and to approve a salary increase for the chief for 2019 and a percentage consistent with policies of the county and/or Fire District Number 2.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to authorize the evaluation and commensurate merit pay increase. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. There are no other items to be considered, so we are adjourned. Have a nice weekend. We'll see you all at 1:30 with a shovel in your hand. And
Raincoat on your back.
go Chiefs.
Thank you.